Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for a purpose such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. For uses of use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, education, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Now let's start this dang show.
You gonna have any fights this week? Oh man, we gotta have some fights.
My name is Steve Mortara, and I've been going to Raider games since 1960, and I have been a season ticket holder since 1972.
Steve Mortara is what you call an original. He has devoted himself to the Raiders for more than 50 years and was a witness to the birth of the franchise.
I started becoming a Raider fan in 1960 when the AFL opened up. We'd follow the team at Kezar Stadium, Candlestick Park, and Frank Ewell Field, and then finally the Oakland Coliseum opened up in 1966, and the Raiders had a brand new stadium. The Raiders became a powerhouse team, and the rest is history.
Over the decades, Mortara has collected anything and everything silver and black, from Hall of Fame autographs and photos to championship tickets and programs. He has it all.
Here is the game day program and the Super Bowl ticket from Super Bowl 11 when we first became world champions, and the ticket to Super Bowl 15 when the Raiders knocked out the Philadelphia Eagles to win that Super Bowl in New Orleans, Louisiana. Here's the program to Super Bowl 18 in Tampa when we knocked off the Washington Redskins and Marcus Allen was MVP. Here's John Fitzgerald Kennedy, President of the United States, declaring himself the #1 Raider fan. Back in the day, people went to Raider games like it was a Friday night. They're going to go out to the club. Al Davis came to the Raiders in 1963 from the San Diego Chargers, became head coach and general manager. Al immediately changed the colors to the silver and black. It was new and exciting, and the team was good.
As the Raiders won Lombardi trophies, Mortara became a superfan and would transform into the man known as Raider Mort.
Raider Mort is our walking encyclopedia when it comes to the Raiders. I want to know something that I don't know. This is the man I come to.
I used to call on a number of talk shows. Well, all of these guys were calling up with names, so I just said, well, Raider Mort. And that stayed with me for a long, long time, over 20 years.
I used to just have tailgate with a few friends and hang out, but now I kind of cruise the whole parking lot with Mort, and it's always fun to watch all the people come up to him and ask him questions. I may know some facts, but when he puts specific dates and years to everything, it always blows me away.
Who was the Raiders' first ever starting QB?
Tommy Flores from the University of Pacific.
In 1963, rookie head coach Al Davis started his first season. What was his record?
10-4.
Name the starting members of Oakland's Super Bowl 11 offensive line.
Well, left tackle was Art Shell, left guard was Gene Upshaw, the center was David Dalby, and the right guard was George Bila, and the right tackle was John Bella.
In the beginning of the 1980 season, what was the Raiders' quarterback depth chart?
The depth chart was Dan Pastorini, Jim Plunkett, and Wilson from BYU. I get an A?
It's been 54 years since Raider Mort attended his first game by his father's side.
Right here is the Raider wall for all the people responsible for helping bring the Raiders back to Oakland from Los Angeles. And I dedicated this to my father, Joe Mortara, senior PGA golf pro, and Steve Raider Mortara.
To this day, he remembers why he is loyal to the silver and black.
I still get excited every morning waking up going to a Raider game. It's been a lot of fun because I'm an original Raider fan. I've seen the entire history of the organization and been parts of winning huge games, Super Bowls, Hall of Fame players, all-pro players, and tremendous comebacks in the Oakland Coliseum. And it's been just a lot of fun, and I wouldn't trade a Raider ticket for anyone in the country.
All right there, that was Raider Mort. This is a special show because we found out a few days ago that Raider Mort had passed away last month. So we wanted to do a special show on him. So no intro music. We're not going to do shameless plug. This is just a special dedication to Raider Mort. Hold on, let's go to the Raiders. This is how great Raider Mort was when it came to the Raiders organization. The Raiders put out a statement. The Raiders family mourns the passing of Steve Mortara, better known to fans everywhere as Raider Mort, a deeply passionate fan of the silver and black and cherished part of the Raider Nation, and a cherished part of the Raider Nation. Mort attended games all over the world in support of the Raiders with a rare and ardent fervor. An expert on team history and trivia, Mort's lifelong love of the Raiders was an inspiration to fans everywhere. The prayers of the Raider Nation are with Mort's family at this time. All right, Asylum. Little different show today. They took your computer away.
All the way around, yeah. Computer problems. Unfortunately, the passing of Raider Mort and everything else, but we wanted to do this dedication because I think everybody who's a Raider fan, who does these podcasts, who's a super fan, all wanted to reach, that level that he reached. I mean, we all aspire, whether we think about it or not, I think we all aspire to be, to that level.
Yes, and Raider Mort, if there was a definition to the term superfan, Raider Mort's picture would be right next to it. Raider Mort was the definition of a super fan, especially a Raiders super fan. And we known him from the Black Hotel gates back in the day when they were in Oakland, and Raider Mort would be over there at Lot D, and anything you wanted to know, the year, the season, the team, the date, the time of the game, the quarter, he could tell you.
At a tailgate, I've seen him numerous times settle an argument. There would always be an argument. No, it was this date. No, it was this person. No, it was this. No, it was that. Where's Raider Mort? Raider Mort? Okay. And then bam. Nobody would ever argue with it because you know what? As Nick Kennedy said, he was the Raider encyclopedia. I mean, he probably knew more about the Raiders than even Al Davis did as far as all the numbers and names and everything that happened. I mean, he was, that good.
Yes, this is from his obituary. Over the years, Steve earned several special achievement awards, including induction into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, as top Raider fan in the U.S. He was also inducted into Vallejo Sports Hall of Fame, followed by the Fox Sports Hall of Champions. More recently, he was installed in the St. Patrick St. Vincent High School Sports Hall of Fame. So, Raider accomplishments, personal accomplishments, recognized throughout the Bay Area. But we want to also introduce someone also special to, you said, with podcasts and everything. On his show, he refers to himself as second underneath Raider Mort, because Raider Mort was special, and this guy knew Raider Mort, close friend, helped him start, when he did his radio back in 2002. So RaiderFan Radio, the original RaiderFan Radio, that's with Raider Rob, a beautiful black hole Steph, and StonerDude. So let me introduce him right here. Raider Rob, big part of the Black Hole original, and close friend to Raider Mort. Raider Rob, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on? Good to see y'all, man. Thank you for having me on the cage match.
Well, thank you for coming.
Yo, yeah.
I wish it was better circumstances, but
yes. You guys are holding it down for the nation and making your waves in the podcast world of representing, real uncut Raider talk. And I appreciate seeing you guys on. Appreciate you and your audience having me on it. Representing OBH, of course, original Black Hole.
Original Black Hole. I didn't get my shirt.
Great Raider fans, Dave Monzo, and yeah, thank you.
Yes. Raider Rob was there, and we played his video, or the video of Raider Rob in there when we had Raider Man a couple of weeks ago talking about the original Black Hole, how it was in the mid 90s, for the most part into the early 2000s. And so Raider Rob, you're an original from back in the day. You saw Raider Mort. He was always there. And I remember I asked you about this earlier today because I was trying to remember. I was a kid. I was 10, 11, 12 years old.
Right.
But I do remember Raider Mort was always like there was a RV that was parked right next to the Black Hole tailgates before they moved the Black Hole behind the outhouses. They were right there by the players' parking lot. But Raider Mort was always right there, and there was an RV. Former Raider players. So can you talk about just Raider Mort and his former Raider players and just that whole scene right there?
Well, the former players, that was a tailgate that the great Charlie Smith ran. That was his tailgate in conjunction with the Oakland Raider. So that's why you would see so many old fans there. I'll get back to that. As far as Steve Mortora, I've lost a great friend. I've lost a man and a confidant in many ways. Mort was, very, very much the embodiment, like it's been said, of what a Raider fan is. And I know we throw around the real and the true and all of that. He was, I like to use the word native. I say I'm a native Oaklander. You know what I'm saying? He was a native Raider fan. And way before the Raider Nation, what would become that, he was going back to 1960. As the piece said, going to games in Kezar, he would tell me about the stories of the big thing then. We do autographs now and I guess selfies for the modern age. It was chin straps. They were after players' chin straps, back in that day. And Asylum, you might go back that far too, wise Gin Double Xer, So, yeah, Mort was, he was a good dude, man. I talked to somebody the other day about just good people. People are just good people no matter what. Mort was that. He was just a good dude, man, good man. And he had a history in sports, starting in Vallejo. His family owned a golf course, I think it was. His father had been a golf pro. And Mort grew up early on around that professional sports environment from that. And then he went to San Jose State, I think it was, and played with some great players, Cody Dietrich and some others down there. He was there for John Carlos and all of that with San State and the 1968 Olympics and all that. I like to think, and a lot of us think, particularly in the Raider realm, that there's some parts of us, how close we get to that team. It's almost Forrest Gumpish. That's what it was like Mort. He was at the second ever game at Kezar Stadium. Okay. And at the very last one in Oakland. And yes, he was dedicated, committed, new Raider. I'll put it like this. Mort was Google. Okay.
Yes, he was before there was a Google.
When it comes to, the Raiders and sports knowledge in general. But the Raiders, this guy would talk about, he could cite preseason games that happened in 1964 where the Raiders were playing the Chiefs or, the Bills. And not only there might have been a play that happened in that game that just for the point he was making, he referenced that. And then he might have found there was also another guy on that Bills team named, Sal Ramos Jr. who went on to play for the Saints when they were expansion team. And, and he married a Miss America. He would know some shit. You'd be like, what the, and it was deep, man. He was just true. He was a walking encyclopedia. And like I said, in the modern terms, he was Google, man. There was nothing he didn't know about football and Raider football.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
And like I said, I was younger, but I remember Raider Mort walked in. You knew who he was. He had the slick hair back. He had the jacket, and then he always had not just it wasn't it was a real ring. It wasn't just some.
It was a real ring. Yes. That's what people don't realize.
At the Oakland. He didn't find at the Oakland swap meet. That was a real. Yeah. That was a real Super Bowl 11 ring that he carried with him. And you how do you say?
Mort was a made man. Okay, if you go back to the lore of the Raiders we grew up on in Oakland, that first generation from 1960 to 82, and the lore of Al Davis and the Evil Empire and the Star Wars connection and all of that, and the pirate swashbuckling attitude, Mort, and some of those guys from back then, they were made men. Before the Raiders left, Mort already had a popularity. He was a nightclub owner, and he sang in R&B back in the late 60s and 70s and worked the circuit in the Bay Area. He eventually became a well-noted club owner with a club called WPLJ's in Walnut Creek, which is right across the street from Cole European Autos, where a lot of the athletes and pro athletes of the Bay Area of the time would get their cars, their Jags and their Ferraris and all that. And Mort's club was right across the street. So he hosted events. Players would go in there and hang out. Mort was entrenched in the sports culture of the Oakland Bay Area. He was a figure in there. Like I said, he was like a made man. He had seats to the Warriors. He had box seats to the Giants. We went to an A's game a couple of times and sat down by, they were bringing him hot dogs and shit. I thought I was with, John Gotti or somebody, and he had, he had the great, he looked like Jim Rockford or some star from them 70s crime dramas or something. Good looking man. Ladies loved him. He was a man about town and had a great presence, but also a great professionalism about him. I learned a lot from being around him, watching him run his club, WPLJ's, and, he had a great business sense. And everything had a juxtaposition to the Raiders that he did. If he did a bikini contest or something or had some type of event, it had a Raider, slant to it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that was one of the things, too, is that he was approachable, too. So he wasn't like just I do all this and I'm big time. Like he'll talk to you. He'll want to share all the knowledge that he had with anyone that would ask him. Because I was younger and I would just listen to all the stories he would tell, and I would even ask questions. And like I said, he'll go pinpoint, like in his head, like you said, like Google. He'll go pinpoint without hesitation. Boom, 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 boom. Like in that video, I know the depth chart. Like you said, I know this and that.
So he'll sit there and break down a play or describe a play that happened in, like you say, in '64 with 4 minutes left in the third quarter. And tell you exactly what happened, which player did it, and who screwed up, who did this, and break it down, to science. And, you're just like, I can't even remember yesterday, let alone you're going to sit here and tell me what happened in, 64
Right.
on this particular play at this particular moment. And a lot of these games that he would tell, or you listen to the stories, I mean, they're not televised. There's no tapes on them. You can't see them anymore. But he still has it like locked in. I mean, he forgot more about Raiders football or just sports in general than we will ever learn in a lifetime.
Yeah,
You
probably
know,
more than what the internet has.
yeah, I mean,
Probably.
we played in a lot of games, back in the era we were growing up, particularly me in Asylum, with games with names, they called them, and the Raiders personified that, which is part of the reason that the NFL had to start clamping down on us after the Holy Roller. I mean, it was divine. They used to talk about the Cowboys being God's team. You look at the history of some of the games and the comebacks and the way we won in the moments of games that seemed, gone for us, or we should lose. It would be like divine intervention. A lot of those games that were at home, the Heidi game, Sea of Hands, Mort was there. Mort was there. And he had this period of time, like Asylum said, and like I was mentioning, there were games that may have been, insignificant in the history after the fact. But at the time, the 1968, this championship game against Houston, the divisional playoff against Kansas City, all of that, all the way up until, 2002, go to the Super Bowl against Tampa. Mort witnessed all these great moments personally, and sometimes on the road. If I'm not mistaken, he was at the Holy Roller in San Diego. I think he mentioned he was at that game when that happened with Dave Casper and all that. So, yeah, and the thing, too, that I don't think Mort gets a lot of credit for is when it came to Bay Area Sports Talk Radio, he was a big contributor. We always find out in pop culture about guys that wrote songs. The big thing in hip hop now, ghostwriters of certain rappers and all that. Mort contributed a lot to shows like, the Gary Radnick Show, JT the Brick, Ron and Don, if anybody remembers them, even the Rod Brooks Show. Behind the scenes, Mort would contribute as well as he was a prolific caller too, which is how we really got to know each other. But yeah, he doesn't get enough credit for that, and I want to give him his credit for the fact that behind the scenes, he helped polish a lot of these guys' knowledge of Bay Area sports and Raider football, because a lot of these guys weren't from the Bay. The Dan Cilios and Ron and Don and JT, they weren't from here. So yeah.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of fans got to know Raider Mort, was on the radio. He was always calling in. I remember Ron Don Ticket 1050 back in the late 90s. They were trying to come in and be Raiders Raiders sports show. But Mort would call in to them. JT the Brick always, even when Greg Papa had his show and on 95.7 out here. He was always calling in. I remember when they made the vote officially for the Raiders to move to Vegas, I was listening to the whole thing. I was doing my route at my old job, and I was listening to the whole thing. And Raider Mort called in.
Cheers.
Raider Mort had called in to talk to Greg Papa, and they were asking him, "Hey, Mort, like, how do you feel about all this?" And I remember he said, "Well, I don't know if I'll be able to make it to the stadium. I'm in the fourth quarter of my life right now." And I always remembered that phrase, because even his regular language was in football talks. Like, I'm in the fourth quarter. Like football was. I don't want to say either football was his life or his life was football. But it was more. It was the Raiders and all of us, like we said earlier, who like Asylum said, we strive to be these super fans or whatever. Mort was right there, and to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame or the Pro Football Hall of Fans, and he had that title for the last 15 years, I believe, about 15 years.
Yep.
So and then. The Raiders acknowledged him.
He'll still have it. He'll still have it.
Yeah. So I mean, like Mort was that rock. If you went to the Oakland Coliseum and you was down there, in the tailgates, Raider Mort was that rock star that you would see. You always go up to him, and he'll always talk to you. And like I said, and then you had said, well, when we were talking before the show, you said that he was the first one, the first inductee to be NFL
he was in that
Hall of Fame
first class.
Yeah.
He was in that first class, and again, himself. You got Howie, Spike in some regards, myself, RaiderMan. Mort was the godfather of us fans that were known without regalia, as RaiderMan would call it. He had that. He was the Elvis of that. You know what I'm saying? He was the one that set the standard for fans recognizing, fans who didn't necessarily have something that drew you to them. And, and you kind of hit on that earlier. There's a lot of fans, in particular in the era that we came up, when it comes to the regalia costume, who didn't seek the camera. I want to make that distinction because in modern era, it's kind of changed. And I know there's been a great debate for the last 10 years. And even before I left Oakland and what have you and stopped going to games there, where you had fans coming just for the attention and the fact that we were such a fan base that got so much media attention and they wanted to try to get on and blah, 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 blah. But,
I'm still that way. I'm still that way.
Yeah.
I still don't go for hunting for the camera or nothing.
Yeah. Well, back, when we were in Oakland, as y'all remember, the camera came and found us. Raiders came back in 95. The world, the sports world, love or hate us as much as they pretend to, wink the fuck wink, okay? They love us. And we were great TV because that team sucked after they came back, after they, had that streak of losses in 96 when it seemed like we were headed to the playoffs. From there, it was just, doom until Chucky got there. But the bottom line was the whole sports world wanted to see, would that Oakland Raider culture be revitalized, in Oakland? And, what were the fan base going to be like? Because we just came out of L.A. for 13 years. The image had taken kind of a hit and had a stain on it. And everybody was kind of really looking forward to seeing Oakland get it back and, recapture that. All of us that are Gen X, we grew up a little bit without them. And we gotten our team back. It was Christmas in June, So, Mort was right there with that. And like I said, with his club and the image that he already had and kind of what he was already known for, he fit right in. And he was a go-to from the gate for all of us fans that were kind of rebuilding what guys like him had helped start and helped mold. And he was like a Yoda. They gave us the instruction on how to really build that tailgate culture, how to really infuse everybody in and just really to recapture what had been when the team left when they were young, So that's what I really appreciated about him. Like you were saying earlier, he had time for everybody, but Mort was a teacher about Raider culture, like a professor, about Raider culture, man. And, everything that he said worked, because he had been in the nightclub business. He knew how to really, help us understand molding, putting ourselves out there on this fan thing where we're promoting the team, we're standing with the team, we've got this image with the team and our own image, but how to be humble in it. You know what I'm saying? And how to make sure you recognize the people that recognize you, and have time for people because, you guys were there. That shit was mind-blowing to just be a fan and then have people be fans of you.
Well, even the simple things of you could meet him, not see him for a year or two, and then see him again, and that man would remember you. He might not remember your name directly, but oh yeah, we talked about this at this one, and you're just kind of like, I'm a nobody, but you want to sit here and remember me? You remember this conversation we had? I mean, he had the, as you said, and I'm sure the clubs, all the businesses he had that little attention to detail that just came so naturally to him.
Yes.
And when, it was those little things. He knew how to make you feel special at a special event. I mean, you're sitting there tailgating, getting ready for a game, and somehow, some way, he made you feel special just by the way he talked to you. And going, you were never a bother to him. You could be like, hey, I remember we started talking about this last time we go. You never got to finish that story because this, and then he'll be able to jump right where he left off continue where he was trying to go with that and make you feel special. Just, you know, yeah. I mean, that's where I'm trying to go. Just make you feel special.
Yeah, no, he did. He did. That's a perfect example of Mort, man. Mort, was encouraging. Always had, positive words, reinforcing words. And the thing I liked about Mort, particularly loved about him when it came to the Raiders, and when it came being a fan, and he, like all of us, wanted to see the team win, and they'd have their periods of ups and downs or whatever and all that. And when Mort, left JT's show to an extent, but helped us, for RaiderFan radio and internet radio back in 2002, and became a co-host with that. Him and I had done a show called Raider Talk Raw a few years prior in '98, and had gotten access to the facility, and we were on Oakland and whatever, and even into, like I said, establishing RaiderFan radio, whatever. Mort in his analysis always had a solution. He would talk about, Fredrickson, he overruns plays, but if he, you know what I'm saying? If he got lower, if he took better angles, he wasn't the type of, we're Raider fans and we've gone through a lot of shit. We bitch and moan too, about shit on the bit. But Mort had a solution. Like, Mort could have been a fucking GM, straight up. He could have been a GM. I spent many a night in the office of his club talking to him about football and O's and shit like that. Mort could have been a GM, as well as, could have been a big-time radio host too. But he understood football, like you said earlier, Asylum. It was in his spirit. It's just part of his bloodline. Whatever God sent him here with 77 years ago, when he got into that Raider thing, it just, like I said, he was like a guru, man, like some type of Lord prophet type guy, man. And yeah, he could have been a GM, really. I mean,
he could have been a coach. He could have been a coach.
Yes.
He could have been a GM. I mean, with his memory and remembering, I mean, imagine him as a coach on the sideline saying, "Remember last time this guy did this to you? This is how he did it. Don't let him do that again." I mean, he could have helped anybody and everybody on the field. Hell, he could even help the coach a game if he was allowed on the sidelines at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, he should have been sitting up there with Al Davis, Jim Otto, right up there. It'll be Raider Mort, Al Davis, and Jim Otto. He should have been up there because, he knew the history. And that's the one thing that we try to do on this show is not just talk about the history of the Raiders, but also talk about the history of the culture that was built in Oakland. And Raider Mort was a cornerstone. Well, for us in Lot D, the black hole that has expanded and whatever, but just I guess talk about how he was an impact when it came to the original black hole and just his presence alone, being there and I guess how the black hole that the legendary fan group and then Raider Mort, a legendary fan, came together.
Well, that was primarily through JT the Brick show and myself, in a lot of ways. I, as the legend goes, met the, black hole and wandered down there during the Indianapolis Colts game in '96 and went down there and saw the guys, just rowdy and, making a lot of noise. And anyway, went down there, met Dave and, Junebug and Richie and Tim and all those guys and Maldo. And, getting on the radio, once, I aligned with these guys. When JT came along, Mort was right there too, coming with his perspective as this legendary, old school fan from the 70s and what have you. And once, I hooked up with him and invited me down to his club and we met, offline as we called it. Then, naturally it was like, hey, I go to the games, you go to the games. I'm going to start tailgating with this group, this black hole organization, man. They've invited me to hang out, come through. All this was happening at the same time. the rise of the black hole and Wiz Zone and Hell's Kitchen and, that whole parking lot and Spike and Howie, become Violator and Vlad, up from LA, they had been the image down there, the fans, all this thing is going on at the same time. And, my popularity and other, Raider Zoe and a whole bunch of other people are rising up, Spike and Howie. So then that's what it was. Mort just started coming to the tailgates that early on, 96, 97. And what he brought was, like I said, wisdom. We know we're tailgating as friends. But once the black hole hit a level of popularity to the outside world, it was kind of like people coming to the aquarium, to watch, the fish, and you could interact with the fish. And you could get in the pool with them and all that, don't get too close though. But that's kind of what it became. And you were there. You're son of the black hole. Black hole son, won't you come? Sell out the stadium with me. Black hole son, won't. You're a true son of the black hole. And so that's what Mort bought. He bought that wisdom. There would be people that would come from Iowa, LA, East Coast. And if they wanted to know about the history, new fans or what have you, fans that were talking about a particular game or just whatever nuance in their Raider knowledge, you go, oh man, go meet Raider Mort. You know what I'm saying? And he was kind of like an ambassador, like the guy that sits in the museum and tells you, yes, back in 1872, blah, 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 that old thing. He's like the tour guide, and a curator of Raider history. So that's what he brought to the black hole. As, like I say, all this thing is coming together. He's part of that. People know him from the JT show, now they can put a face with the name and da-da-da. But he considered himself, part of the black hole, too. We sat up in the luxury boxes. More that fat pockets, baby. He had fat pockets. But he would come down once in a while, stand in the hole for, couple series, something like that, go up. But he considered himself a part of the whole, and what he brought to it was a maturity, that historian type vibe. Because like I said, this whole curiosity was going, what is this black hole? And when you came to the black hole, these personalities were there, and you heard a band and so it was kind of like the center place of people coming and just getting Raider vibes. And, Mort offered the history of all that.
Yes, and I know you were a close friend with him throughout the years. I guess, how did the Raiders discover Raider Mort? How did he end up on the radar to the point where he did make it to the NFL first inductee?
On radio. One of the biggest hoaxes in professional sports and entertainment is that the artist or the actor tells you, I don't read my reviews. I don't listen to sports talk. Now, in the Forrest Gumpish life that I was privileged to have with Raider Mort, when we did Raider Talk Raw in 1998 and did it from the facility and had access in it, guess what you'd hear pipe through the fucking building? It's the biggest myth. So they're listening to it, and they also hear the fans. And, particularly with the Ticket 1050, and particularly with JT's show, which he considered caller-driven. So he put the emphasis on us as callers being the features. And that's how some of us got, known and had our popularity. But, yeah, that's where they heard Mort from. And Mort, he grew up with Gary Radnick in San Jose. They'd all hung out together, like I said earlier. He had been, a figure before the Raiders had left. So they knew who he was, and the thing, when it comes to some of us as fans or whatever, we get on these type of platforms and we can expound and talk X's and O's and And, there are some of us that break through. And Mort broke through where, like I said earlier, he should have, and in a righteous world, he would have had a place in that sports media back then as a talk show host. That's how good he was. And they knew that. But, as everything, motherfuckers want to try to use Raider fans. You know what I'm saying? So keeping it real, the establishment used him for his knowledge. He get invited to things, all of that. Like I said, behind the scenes, he contributed to JT's show, Ron and Don, a lot of these shows. and didn't get due credit at the time. But, they knew who he was and they respected his knowledge and all that. They just, none of them ever crossed over to the point of offering him, you know what I'm saying, a real opportunity to shine on a mainstream basis. But, yeah, they knew who he was from listening to him on the radio.
Yeah, because like I said, I remember always hearing him on there. JT the Brick was always a big fan of him, even these later years. I did have what JT the Brick had said about Raider Mort. JT the Brick said, sharing the sad news of the passing of my dear friend Steve Mortara. Raider Mort was a legendary Raiders fan, entrepreneur, school teacher, and former outstanding athlete. We spoke almost daily for decades. His recent health struggles were difficult, and he had a tough end to his life journey. We will remember the great times we had together at games and on the radio. He will be missed by so many. R.I.P. Mort. Rest easy, my friend. I mean, Mort was known, throughout the Bay Area. I just wish that, like you said, like more people were able to recognize, outside of us Raider fans and like I feel like Mort was owed more even when the Raiders moved to Las Vegas. Raider Mort was owed more for his knowledge and for his dedication to the Raiders.
Raider Mort would have thrived in today's time if it happened 30 years ago. I mean, to me,
Yes.
if he would have had these kind of platforms going and everything 30, 40, years ago, I mean, he would have got that recognition that you were talking about that he deserved. He would have gotten out there and see. I mean, it wouldn't have taken him long, I feel, because of his personality, his knowledge, and everything. If the technology, he was ahead of his time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If he had today's technology, he would be one of the biggest names out there right now.
Yeah, and we just missed that as an independent show. We were an internet, pioneering show. We go back to Ustream in 2002, and one of the few sports related shows particularly identified with a team. And when Mort came on, like I said again, he brought that analysis, he brought that kind of elder statesman energy and vibe with him, and that knowledge of Raiders history and tradition and all that. And so we were all at the forefront of what would become podcasting. It's just that it wasn't the advertising or anything like that you have now, when the interest wasn't as broad as it is or as easy as it is now to set up a camera and blah, 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 and all that. And then have it beam out to the world. It was kind of regional, or, maybe you told some people and you hope they told some people and da. That's where he got, I remember he used that, we ended up doing well for a minute, and what it was at the time, like I said, internet radio and how they gauged ratings and all that. By the time 2004 hit, after that Super Bowl and whatever, we were getting some notices, and he was getting recognized from that too, and was a pioneer in that. But I remember he was asking us, Tim Del Rosario was producing us at the time, and Mort would wonder, because when we first started out, like a podcast is now, we were in this converted church that had been made in the KECG radio in Oakland, 8.1, and they still had pews in there from when it was a church and all that, and we were in front of this kind of makeshift background with some pictures of the cheerleaders and, have microphones up, a little table. And Mort, just would look around and was kind of like, okay, who are we playing to? Who am I talking to? And like I said, this is the inception of what this is now. So you were just talking to each other, like it is now. You just didn't have the cameras yet. And so eventually, like I said, 2 years in, we're doing pretty good, seeing stats and all that. And Mort was like, is anybody watching this? They're like, yeah. He's like, because, me. It's like, you saying, I'm a humble guy. He's like, but I've been putting out some good stuff because I don't know what this is and I don't know who I'm talking to. So, I'm trying to give the best. Am I doing all right? I'm like, you're doing great. This is all new to us. We're talking, and I tried to show him the little stats, like this is kind of the percentage of people that are watching, and it's a new platform. And his thing was just that, I hope the audience, I hope there's somebody out there listening to what I'm putting out. You know, it wasn't for his own pat on the back or anything. He just, somebody was getting it because he was serious. You know, Mort was like Bob Newhart. He had a deadpan sense of humor. You know what I'm saying? He was humorous, but it was deadpan, but he was also like, you know, kind of literal. You know what I'm saying? He could be literal, you know, and he really was like, who's listening to this? And he didn't understand it wasn't like terrestrial radio or anything like that. It's a whole different audience. They're on computers. They're on an iPad, you know. But he started to gain some popularity from that from about the second and third year, and he started to see there was this new audience emerging. So back to what Asylum said. In this medium now, we have long form, you know, talk like I'm doing right now. Yeah, it fit perfectly. Perfectly, yeah.
Yeah, that's like what we
were just slightly a little early, you know. We were slightly a little early, you know.
Yeah, that's like us on this show. Like we try to dedicate to detail the history. Even we'll do some random comparisons, throw in some stats, live visual aids, and all that. And we're like underground, you know. And it is what it is. We do this for fun. We do this to talk about the Raiders and then what we experienced in Oakland, and that's what it sounds like how you guys started with Raider Mort. You know, someone, you know, both of you guys who have all this knowledge, all this Raider knowledge that people don't see, that people don't understand, that's a lot of knowledge that you can tap into and understand more understand this franchise and how it was, especially with Al Davis in the early years and evolving a Super Bowl 11, 15, 18, all those personalities that the team had, all those, you know, the Matuzaks running around doing some crazy things and, you know, outside the facility and coming back and then, you know, having what should be a Hall of Fame career. And, you know, they don't acknowledge him yet. A lot of Raiders they don't acknowledge yet. But
right.
That's something that, you know, and I get it because that's something, you know, when you have a lot to offer when it comes to Raider knowledge and all of that, and you're wondering like, wait, is anyone watching this? Is anyone, you know, seeing it? And not like in a come listen to me, I'm talking, but more like, hey, like, you know, this is some good stuff. Are they learning from what we experienced?
Learning. I was just going to say that. I was going to say, are they learning? Are they hearing what you have to say and learning from you?
Yeah, and you know that's what we try to do. And I watch your show, RaiderFan Radio, and that's what you guys do. And it's not like trying to pander to what you want to hear, but it's not pandering to all the negativity. It's true Raider fans talking true Raider conversations, whether it's with emotion but with knowledge that blend. So you know, you were the pioneer of that with Raider Mort. Talk about that. I know you talk about that journey, but just talk about how it is now and what it could have been more so if Raider Mort, I guess if Raider Mort was able to bring that knowledge out more. Do you think the fan base would have more knowledge and more understanding of what we do and what this organization does, and I guess the past and what it's built on?
You know, that's a good question because I sit at the doorstep of my sexy 60s, and I look back, you know, being young, like I said, 25, 30 years ago, you know, 25 more accurately, and meeting guys like Mort and Smokey and Chains and some of the old veterans, you know, that came before me. And, you know, when I was younger, I thought it would last forever. You know what I'm saying? Or the time that we were in, that Chucky era and that era of the nation being built up post the Super Bowl loss and the expectation and the promise we all, you know, thought we were going to have. Like, okay, we've been to the Super Bowl. It's about to turn over. Maybe, you know, every couple of years we'll be back and da-da-da-da-da. Juxtaposed with what it takes to be a fan and a Raider fan and what we go through and what we pride ourselves in believing in and all that. So Mort, you know, like I said, he was a godfather of all of that. And in that time, for all of us, you know, we thought we would be winning. we felt that where we were and everything was feeding off each other. You know what I'm saying? And Mort was, feeding off what was going on too, and recapturing a part of what had been and all that. And so, yeah, like I said, we were ahead of our time when it came to, the internet thing. As a fan and the Raiders in general, we were all thinking that, this was going to last. This was going to be what it was going to be, the Chuck vibe and all that. So, I forget what the original question is. I drifted off here. Sorry about that.
Well, no,
it was a long-winded question, to be honest with you.
just
right.
The people, I feel like all these podcasters who, all these new ones that pop up and everything.
You said difference in cultures. Okay, I'm with you. Sorry about that. I mean, when it comes to like what you guys are doing, and what we're doing too on RaiderFan Radio, we kind of had an audience that we came back to in 2020 when we rebooted the show after having been off for a number of years from doing a network, internet network in Oakland. But I think that the culture has changed. We had the fortunates of being in Oakland where there was a stable, already built-in community of Raider fans over a span of 30, 40 years at the time when the Raiders come back in 95 and then, radio popularity and then the internet starts to come in the early 2000s and all that. So once you get the podcasting in 07 and 08, that's all there was, was the Raiders and all that. And so, and it being in Oakland, where, like I said, there's now 4 generations and is intrinsic to what the identity of the team is. And everyone's interested in it. And everybody's living it. I don't think you have that now. And I think on YouTube, there's kind of, no offense to a new generation. And back to what I was going to say. I always felt when I got to a certain point, I would know and be cool with letting the young generation take over. So I understand it's the millennial generation and the Z's now who are now out there representing what the fan base is in the Raider Nation. And so I try not to be too critical, but as a society, they're just not curious, man, about it. And you would have to be curious about what the Raiders are and the history of it and the nuances and all that to be into a guy like Raider Mort in 2025. You'd have to be wanting to seek that knowledge, as opposed to us who can look back, particularly me in Asylum, we can look back to maybe 80, 100 years of history that we can cite and reference. You know what I'm saying? On anything. 60 years of pro sports and the Raiders and all that. These kids today, like you kind of said earlier, they don't remember the last text, man. And so the curiosity for knowing the history of the Raiders, I just don't think it's there. And plus, you're in a new place where the Raiders honestly have not forged a real community here with Las Vegas Raider fans, So, yeah, and just generational. Whole thing, just
you're definitely there, and you're definitely with the generational part because, I mean, we'll say the generational aspect of everything. History is being lost all the way around. I mean, when you talk about sports in the world, history is not as important as it used to be, and people need to remember where we came from as the Oakland Raiders. I always refer to Oakland as Mecca. I mean, that's Mecca. It always will be Mecca. I'm from Las Vegas. I was born in Las Vegas. So then moving to Las Vegas was kind of a bittersweet victory, in a way. But when me and Savage started the show, one of the main parts of doing this is we did not want to let people forget the history. We're not just trying to be old people on here and only just remembering everything. Well, we can remember the old time we were bad. I mean, we dominated throughout, the years up going into the 2000s, but we had seasons that were bad.
We lived it.
Exactly. But, these generations now want to talk about, we're just trying to relive the old days. No, we're not trying to relive the old days. We're trying to let you remember or know what brought, us we have the 3 Super Bowls. You want to talk about those 3 Super Bowl wins, but what about those 2 Super Bowl losses? We've been to 5 Super Bowls. We got to remember everything. We want to tell you, you talk about we have the 3 trophies, but do you know anything that led up to those 3 trophies? And you need to know that. We talk about Godfathers. Al Davis is the godfather of the Raiders. You know, Raider Mort, godfather of Raider fans. I mean, when it comes down to it, we have 2 godfathers in the nation. And people, if you forget about that, we don't want to let that get forgotten about because that's an important part of the Raiders' identity. As Raider fans' identity is
Say it,
our
brother.
history.
Say it.
If it wasn't for the history, what do you have to be proud of, right? Well, you want to be the Cleveland Browns and have a
Which one?
history
Right.
of what, the history of losing? I mean, they did great things. The dog pound. We all know the black hole started, wanted to be like the dog pound. They have certain things in there as fans that make great, but as a football team, you know, really, what did they have? They had some seasons. They were close to making it, and everything like that. But we can't forget about the could have been. We have to remember everything that led up to this, the characters. We talked about, there's a John Madden movie coming out. Okay, that's history. The whole reason why did that first Super Bowl win work? Why did we get it? We had so many years of getting, not making it and being known as a team that couldn't get over that hump. Those were all the little things in history. But why was those teams so dominant? It's just because John Madden let them be themselves. It was, it's the little thing. We can't forget the history and all this. And that's the one thing I loved about Raider Mort. And I could sit there and listen to him for a week straight, get no sleep and go. Is the history, the stories, everything going. We can't forget the history because the history is what made the future.
And history can
The present.
No, history can be repeated, and we've seen other teams, what has been my lament and my argument, my frustration, why I'm disgruntled, is that our template has been used by other teams in the last 10 and 15 years to championship results. We've regressed from our identity, okay? And our identity, more than anything, is violence, okay? That's one of our identities. And another one is intimidation. Another one is aggressiveness. And, I've taken some criticisms, on my show for how critical I have been of what I've witnessed and seen with this team and how they've operated and how they've missed opportunities to go after, package together and attempt to play a team like Jacksonville a few years ago to go after Trevor Lawrence. The last couple years, we watched 3 world-class, all college, quarterbacks come out that we, in Al Davis's day, and particularly when Ron Wolf was the GM and Allo Casal, we would have been going after the Justin Herberts, the J.J. McCarthys. You know what I'm saying? Especially as much as Al, Mr. Davis, King Al, like to collect great players, particularly winning players, he'd have been all over J.J. McCarthy. Okay? Bo Nix, who's going to be probably kicking our ass if we don't get our shit together for the Broncos 2 times a year. Those were the type of players the Raiders used to go after. We used to be aggressive in the draft. We'd make trades in lower rounds for people you never heard of. Dickie Smith from friggin' University of Vermont. But he'd be a hell of a friggin' special teams player or, doing things like Ray Guy, the imagination.
Gene Upshaw coming from an all-black college that nobody else was looking for.
Right.
Exactly.
Getting Willie Brown from the Broncos. The imagination in the modern age of the 2025 Raiders is what, I have had to be critical of. Aaron Rodgers, for whatever you want to make of it and him going to the Jets, it was sitting there right there, for him to come here and play with Devontae. You know what I'm saying? He was really Devontae's friend, not Carr. And then a lot of you were sold by the potential of waiting for him to develop when you never saw any advancement in him. So you wasted 8 years fucking around with Derek Carr. So, this team has got to glitch. The only thing that's going to work, there are teams that are legacy teams. There's the Yankees. There's the Dodgers. There's the Flyers hockey and the Bruins. In basketball, there's the Celtics, there's the Lakers, of course, as we know. We are those legacy teams. We're one of them. In the NFL and pro sports, period, a brand team that sells anywhere, we've proven. And particularly for our era of fans, when the black hole and all that in Oakland was going on, the Oakland Raider Nation, we proved how global we were, all right? And what worked then is what was always going to work. There are things that work for certain franchises, and what is your identity? What is your MO, so to speak? And ours, like I said, is violence, intimidation, explosiveness, and excitement. You know what I'm saying? And we're
blue collar
now.
It was blue collar. Everything you said right there is blue collar. The blue collar man, right? Get up, go to work, do your job, do it to the best, have fun when you were playing, and then go back to business. It was the blue collar aspect of the whole thing. We were in Oakland, a blue collar town. You're a blue collar team. You talk about violence and all this other stuff, which was us. We were intimidating. We were feared.
Yes.
People did not, receivers were afraid to go across the field because of our secondary, the soul patrol, everything else like that. And we're slowly starting to get there. We have players like that with the Max Crosby who's trying to bring it back and go and all that. But again, if we forget about the history, if we didn't have the Raider Morts to be able to teach us the history, and that gets forgot about, you're never going to get that identity back. The Raiders was just a down and dirty, anything to win. Al Davis's statement was, just win.
Yep.
It wasn't win big, win this way. It was just win. It didn't matter how you got it. Just win. And like you said, we lost that identity because we got to be flashy. We got to be this. We don't have to do that. Let's go back to, we have changed football. Al Davis and the Raiders have changed football many ways, whether it be with rules made to try to stop us or innovative ways, like you were just talking about, of getting players and going and piecing together. We took everybody's cast off. He's never going to work in the NFL. Al Davis will bring him in. This is your last chance, buddy. You want to be something, here's your chance. And go. And we take everyone's cast off, put them together with the right coach. And what ends up happening? You had a dominant team. And that all comes from, and it comes from knowing the history, having people like the Cage Bats, like us three out here, like Raider Mort, who can remind people of the good days, of the times that are going on, of the little things. A lot of people don't like Al Davis going this, that. They don't see all the little things he did in the NFL to make the NFL what it is today. And if you forget that and give Roger Goodell what he wants, the NFL will be forgotten and will be flag football.
Yeah, and
right there, ladies and gentlemen, the Cage Match audience, what Asylum just ran down there, that you need to be, in front of the team, and they need to let you say that, because that's exactly what it is. It was perfectly said. That's what it is, period, in a nutshell. Like I said, history can repeat itself. Don't look to try to be what was the past. Make new history in respect and deference and into understanding, like you said, the history, and incorporate it in today's football. And it starts with the coaching. And so, Pete Carroll saying that's what he wants to get back to. We know what he did with the Legion of Doom up in Seattle and what have you, and, having one of the great all-time, power inside, outside running backs, and Marshawn Lynch from Oakland up there, and Golden Tate, and catching lightning in the bottle when they did. He's talking the talk. But, at least for me, it's been 40 plus years, other than with Chucky, in the tail end of Flores, where these coaches come in and they don't grasp that, mantra. And that's what we have to do and have to get back to. It starts with coaching, and it comes down to, truthfully, what does Mark Davis want to do with this team? Are the Raiders trying to win, or have we gotten ourselves in a cushy little situation here in Vegas where it's enough to make money off of 35,000 Bears fans, and 15,000 Raider fans, and get an imbalance in your own home stadium. But long as the house is making money, which would be Allegiant Stadium if you put it in the analogy of the casinos and how businesses run here in Las Vegas. Allegiant is the house. Long as the house makes its money, what the fuck do I care if I'm show down, on the second floor doing the can and shit, or I got a DJ in the lobby. The DJ's getting paid no matter what, because making money.
There was a time
that's a business model in Las Vegas,
Oh no, and it is. And there was a time we used to black out away games. We used to turn away games into home games. You had coaches turn around saying, "Whatever you do, don't sell your tickets to Raiders fans. I don't want to see black jerseys in that stadium. I want to see whatever color their jerseys were going." Because why? I mean, and we could have a losing season and we would still do that because of the history. Again, I'm gonna always go back to history. I'm a history buff, anyways. But it goes back to the fans remembering what can happen, how simple it is. Like we were talking about home field advantage, how simple it is on an away game. Just a few, extra fans in there can make a difference and turn a home game for the other team into a road game and make it difficult and force them to have to play a different type of football. Play Raiders football, not whatever their game plan was. Let's come back and play Raiders football.
Raiders football, exactly.
Yeah, and that's going back to what you're talking about.
To that point, Asylum, remember how it was when we would go to San Diego?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we coined the phrase, I coined the phrase South Oakland. I started calling South Oakland on JT show back in the day. Because we go down there and between us and LA fans that came down, we ran that motherfucker. That's why they treated us like shit when we were down there for the Super Bowl that year. With Solomon's bail bonds talking about lock up your children, lock up your wives, close the Raiders fans are coming. Like we were notorious. Our reputation preceded us, but yeah.
Yeah, and that was that culture. We're talking about the Raiders were violent, but they weren't just violent; they were smart. They were violent because they were getting in your head. It was psychological. Talking about receivers, opposing teams, they didn't want to go up the middle because one of the rules was, hey, hit them early, so they're thinking about you. Then they ain't thinking about that ball. So when they come up the middle, they ain't looking at that ball; they're looking at us. That's where the turnovers come over. And the same thing with us fans. They think we're violent. They think we're this and that and this and that. Okay, we play off it, just like John Madden had said. Okay, we play dirty. What are you gonna do about it? The Raider fans had this persona of they're thugs and they're this and they're that. Okay, we'll take over your stadium. We're gonna take over the crowd noise. We're gonna take over the game. The Raider fans were that 12th man before the Seattle Seahawks had that 12th man. The Raider fans were out there representing the team because they understood the assignment of how the old school Raiders were. Psychological. We're going to say this. We're going to act this way because that's what you feel. Okay, you're going to keep thinking about us. You're going to keep hearing us. We're going to be in your head. You ain't going to be able to concentrate. You're not going to be able to run your plays like you want to because we're in your head. And one of my old football coaches, we honor him after every show. There's a clip, and I got to put the clip on there, but it goes, I don't cuss because my mom watches. So, he says the mind F is a mother.
The mind fuck.
Yeah.
I'm good for you.
I got you.
Yeah. And that's what the Raiders did. That's what the Raiders players did. And that's what us Raider fans did. And I feel like that we have gone away from that each year after Al Davis's passing. We've kind of gone away from that. We're like you said, it's a business model out there in Vegas, and as long as we're making money.
What has also happened is that, like I said, the fan base has changed where it's not savvy enough to recognize that you need to recapture what we influenced. You look in the NFL stands today, and as I'm saying, and I've written in my upcoming book that's going to be released hopefully later this year, about the Raider Nation, the Oakland Raider Nation, the Black Hole, my times as Raider Rob, that you see what are essentially Raider fan starter kits in these other stadiums with these other fans. The donkey rope chain. Raider fans were the first ones in the mid-'90s. It was a carryover from us having just left L.A., with the whole imagery of NWA being associated with the team and just hip hop culture at the time. There were, big donkey rope chains. And so Oakland fans were the first ones to put little emblems on them donkey rope chains. Then you've got the construction hats. That was Black Hole Harry. And Steve, down in the Black Hole, were the first fans in the mid-'90s when you had the Jet fans with the fire hats. But outside of that, nobody was wearing a construction hat. Nobody had the traffic cone like Black Hole Harry that became a megaphone like in the 1950s. You know, like he was watching Newt Rockney or Johnny Unitas or some shit. You know, all of that was the Raiders. You look at it now, you see Dolphin fans with spikes, dressed up with shoulder pads, Colt fans with spikes, dressed up with paint. No, that cock-sucking sombrero-wearing guy up in Green Bay. That's totally Senor. Because Senor is ironically, wink, wink, playing off of a name that was originally posed for the team, the Oakland Senors. So it wouldn't apply to any other team. Yeah. So they've been ripping us off for years. You know, and stealing from us. And now you see these fans in the stadium, and they look like we looked 20 years ago. And their teams have nothing to do with Pirates. And you hear Hell's Bells. That's our anthem. It's in every stadium. It's in professional volleyball games. I go and see the Vegas Thrill out here. They're playing it at women's volleyball games. But that's our anthem, Hell's Bells. God bless Angus Young and AC/DC, baby Phil Rudd. You know? So I think the young fans today don't understand that history too, Asylum. And
I agree.
You know, since we're so steeped in commercialism now, you see so many themes in sports that are created by the Oakland Raider Nation, man. And I don't give a fuck who don't like it. Okay? We set precedents. We changed the modern day fan culture of sports, you know, and made it marketable and made it more visual. You know, like I said, that team sucked for a lot of years before they got good. But the Raider game was the place to be. You know, everybody was coming to be at a Raider game and be at a Raider game because of the atmosphere that the fans and the energy of the fans that was encompassed in that Coliseum. And as Penny Snake Saber called that little bull ring. You know?
No, it's just, we talked about this before. Walking into that Oakland Coliseum, walking in those hallways and hearing Raider, and everybody knew what to do. But to hear it echoing throughout the whole stadium, throughout the whole game, as you're leaving, as you're entering, as you're leaving. I mean, there was so many, like you said, so much things that we saw. I mean, there's a reason why it took me 5 years to come up with my persona, because I didn't want to be like everybody else. I wanted something original. I wanted something that nobody had. Raiders, any other team, and I guarantee if you ever see it out there, I was the first. There's been nobody else. There's only one Asylum, and there's only one person who goes in a straitjacket and a cage and all this. But that's the thing. A real straitjacket at that, yes.
Yeah,
you know,
it looks real.
It's a real straitjacket. It's a real straitjacket.
Yeah. It looks like
it's 100% real. But that's the thing is, as you said, we started so much different things. You know, shoulder pads. You got Violator. You know, the Gorilla Shoes. You got the Miami. You got so many people trying to do all this shit because you always had Gorilla on TV because he was always down there pounding the mats and everything at the games, and always made it on TV because of where he sat and going. And everybody else wants to try to take that. We talk about the Black Hole taking wanting to be like the Dog Pound. Well, we did that and did it better. The Dog Pound is known. The Dog Pound is known, but everybody knows about the Black Hole.
And we give them credit. And we give them credit.
Arguably for me, we have the greatest sports mascot unofficially ever, which is Shieldhead, my friend Andrew Caldwell as Shieldhead. That he is ultimately, I know there's been some copycats over the years and what have you, and God bless them, it's all good. But that to me is one of the greatest sports, fan renditions of representing the team. And naturally, how well it goes with the shield and the eye patch, and he personified the greatest mascot in sports to me.
I used to sit close to him in the stadium.
And with the Raider fans, going back to what you were saying, Rob and Asylum, you know how the Raider team rules were changed because of Raider games. That, like you said, the holy roller, you can't push a fumble forward. You have to jump on it if the ball's dead or whatever. You know, these different rules. Same thing. The Alzado rule, which wasn't a rule, but they still threw a flag when they threw the helmet at the Jets tackle. But even the Raider fans, and you talked about Hard Hat Harry. Hard Hat Harry made a dummy of a star to each team we're playing, and he was swinging around. Okay, new rule: you can't have the dummy swing around. Okay, so shake. Okay, new rule: you can't have the dummy there. My dad had his band. First time an amplified band was out there, and a whole party would show up in the parking lot. Hey guys, we can't have too much a big group. We can't police it. We got to change this. We can't do this. You know, many things even the Raider fans have done. They try to change, or they try to police, or they try to regulate. You know, what other fan did you see was over there slamming the fence to the point where it fell over? You know, what other fans have you seen? Have you seen where in this certain section
of seats,
section
there's been
105,
sections of seats that have collapsed and shit too.
Yeah,
I'll add to that, Sal. I'm sorry, Savage. I'll add to that. What about the fact you tried to go to San Diego, or back in San Diego, and they wouldn't let Raiders super fans dress up? We had to go in normal clothing. We couldn't wear anything like that because we would stand out and make their team look bad, worse. You get on TV, and their guys wouldn't get on TV because we were so noticeable, so out there.
Speaking of that, we're San Diego were the first ones to be like, hey, we can't keep having Raider fans buy tickets. We can't sell individual tickets. It has to be in a package. So if they're going to buy one Raider game, Raiders at the Chargers, they have to buy 3 other ones. You know, so maybe to deter them from coming over. Raider fans change rules too. So
we changed rules, and we changed also media protocols and NFL protocols. I'll tell you that story real briefly. It's going to be in my book, my forthcoming book, Pride and Noise: The Confessed True Story of the Raider Nation. But we had we're in a situation, like you guys will remember, when we had this run, probably 99 through 2002, maybe up to the Super Bowl. We kept playing the Jets every year. Remember that? The Jets were coming. And then we get to the playoffs, but we kept playing the Jets. You know, Monday night, Sunday night, you know, they seem to come every year for about 5 years. Well, when they were under Herman Edwards, it was a night game. And I tell the story in the book, but the year before they had came, and one of the NFL guys that I knew, was a guy that worked within the official and all that. We were talking before a game when they were doing the introductions. When the opposing players used to get introduced, they used to come down to the south end zone and would get introduced and run out to the middle of the field. And I told him this particular time, you know, one day somebody's going to come down because they were effing with us. You know, the Jet players. You know, they come, and other players too. San Diego, but it didn't matter who it was. And it was cool. You know, we just back me and Junior Seau used to have some good screaming matches. But that's how close, if y'all remember, the opposing team would be for a while. They'd get introduced and run down, you know, and we'd all boo them and all that crap. So I told him, I said, man, one day somebody's going to get pulled in here, and we're not going to give them back. Okay? And I was joking on it. But anyway, the next year they come. And they come down, and Herman Edwards is in the paper talking about, we're not scared of the black hole, and blah, blah, blah. So they come down, and sure enough, you know, me, a few others who are named in the book, but I won't name here, reached out, grabbed a couple of helmets, you know, nothing really too demonstrative and all that shit. But it got noticed and all that. And what happened is the very next year, they stopped opposing teams from coming down there. And as you noticed, they started being introduced from the middle of the field. And it wasn't just a black hole. It was the whole south end zone because they'd be sitting taunting us and talking shit. Because every team wanted to challenge Raider fans. You know, everybody, wanted to see, as I used to say, if the theory was real. That Raider fans were tough, and and like I said, it wasn't so much that we were violent. I told a reporter one time, there are 95% of us in the stadium are Raider fans. We wouldn't be fighting each other. So that was myth, But anyway, yeah. That rule got changed because of Raider fans that in the Coliseum, the opposing fan team started getting introduced from the 50-yard line as opposed to down in the south end zone.
Yeah, I remember that too. And that was the thing too. Like the Raiders had a mystique, and the Raider fans had a mystique, and that's what we try to bring back. Well, I mean, as best as we could. That's what we tried to acknowledge and remember that the fans, us, me, you, Asylum, there was a mystique that we were a part of. That the fans also, and now the way I see it now, it's like the Raiders are Star Wars. And a lot of the fans are like Spaceballs. It's just like
surrounded by assholes.
And the way I see it, like with the Raiders, it's like in Tommy Boy, Al Davis passed away. Hey,
I want to ask something.
It's all about merchandise, okay? We make our money.
It's all about merchandise. Who's got in football? Who's the best at merchandising? The goddamn Raiders.
At one time, it was us, legitimately, for 15 years, from like 1982 through almost, like I said, at the end of the gangster rap era, going into the 2000s. We were every year #1 in merchandise, that popular Raider gear and all that shit. Legit. I mean, we made a lot of money for the NFL. And in the 70s, when the NFL was selling violence and brutality and hard-hitting defense and all that, and the game was being built on that, saved itself from this, drought that they had of quality quarterbacks from like 78 through 88, defense saved the NFL, and the Raiders were the poster children for what defense was supposed to be, and this is how they treat us, and been treating us. So, they're going to have to get it back organically. The only thing that's going to really work is Al Davis football. And again, it's not about trying to recapture the past. It's taking what worked in the past and modernizing it.
Yeah.
It's in attitude. It's in spirit. It's in, the coaching, the fundamentals. It's in the front office. It's all that, So the fans will be there. I mean, Raider fans are ubiquitous with fanship. But, at the prices, I just want to see these new fans be a little more demanding about what they want to see on the field, and be a little more aggressive about challenging the front office to put a winning product on the field. I mean, for $25 16-ounce beer, fuck that, man. You need to be out here stomping the shit out of people, within the confines of the rules.
But again, what we were talking about, right? They've gotten accustomed to these. Oh, no, it's okay. I'm sorry. I'll probably interrupt you. But what you're talking about. They've gotten accustomed to the losing aspect that the Raiders have done over the last 20 years, 25 years, and everything. And this is why we teach, right? Why we have the Raider Morts and why we have us and why we have the Captain Jacks and stuff like that. Why we teach about, I know people don't like to hear the 19s anything, but you know what? That's when we dominated. 1960, late 60s, 70s, into the 80s. I mean, those are the times we dominated. We got to teach that, not forget that, because if we forget how we dominated, how we're the only team that was called the team of the decades, because we dominated 3 fucking decades.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And if we forget how we did that, we will never dominate again. All right, we gave the Chiefs a dynasty because we forgot how to dominate on that football field. We've wasted talent as far as players when we've had good players. We've gotten rid of them because of this, just different things. And yet we have a Max Crosby who represents that old 60s, 70s, and 80s mentality. I want to be better. I want to be the best. I want to dominate. It's just not good football. I want to hurt the quarterback. I want to get to the court. I want to be in his head.
Exactly.
We got somebody there, and so he hasn't forgot what it's been. He wasn't around during that, but he embodies that old school blue
And
collar
embraces it.
Raiders football that we were used to watching back in the day. And if we don't teach this history, if we don't carry on Mort's mission as fans ourselves, we will never have it again.
Yeah.
Going into this season where you stand now so early, but of course knowing now how the football staff is set up and the new head coach, what do you think, Asylum, about Pete Carroll and what he was saying at his signing and what he has been saying about what he wants to bring to the team? Do you think, he may be the guy? I mean, I'm going to tell Raider Nation this. Geno Smith's not taking to the fucking Sugar Bowl, okay? God bless you, but, we're still tinkering around. We're not going after franchise Jackson Dart, franchise quarterback, So whatever with Geno Smith. But what do you think, Asylum, about what Pete Carroll about?
Okay, my opinion on Pete Carroll and all this is he wasn't. I was, and I know it's unpopular. I was all about continuity. I wanted to keep AP just because we keep going through head coaches like we did. So I was on that train. But obviously, it went. The thing I think Pete Carroll has in his favor, to do with his age and everything, is he was coaching. He knows that old school Raider football, in the 70s and 80s and everything. So I think we have a chance. He's what, 72, going to be 73 this year? Something like that.
74.
Okay, 73, 74. I was off by a year. Okay. But the thing is, he has that old school mentality when it comes to the coaching, when it comes to the thinking of football. What's it take to go? Okay, you brought up the Legion of Boom earlier in this show, right? Okay, so we know he could possibly repeat that. But then you brought up the running game. What were the Raiders known for during those years we were just talking about, the team of the decades? We had the running game. And then what's he go do? He goes and gets Ashton Genty.
Genty, yeah.
Yeah, Genty, which is, we have to wait to see. I know he's a rookie, but he has shades of being that old school blue collar Raiders running back that we used to have, that we could count on. Get those hard yards, that ground and pound. You know what? The first two quarters don't matter. I don't care if he has 50 yards in those quarters. But if he wears down that damn defensive line and is breaking it down in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, and now he's running all over them, that was the Raiders football back then. That run game, which opens up the passing game, which could open up the deep ball, which we're going back to Al Davis and Daryl LaMonica and Mad Ball, all that. But behind all that was that run game. And we have a coach who believes in the old systems. He's trying to change things, and I think that's where Chip Kelly's coming in to be able to add that modern twist that you were talking about to the old school aspects of football that worked. So we might have a good combination here. I don't expect this first year to be. I'm not saying we're Super Bowl bound this year, and everything else like that. It's going to take time. And my only problem with all this, with Pete Carroll, which has to do with his age, is we got him for 3 years, possibly 4 years. So who's going to be his successor? Because when we become great again, if he can change the culture, like Del Rio did. Del Rio was never going to take us to a Super Bowl. But Del Rio changed the culture, that losing culture we had, and we did not put the right coach behind him. We got Gruden in, and it started to go, but it fell flat on its face. To be real, with the emails and everything, it did not work out. We tried to, recreate something that probably could not be recreated. But I'm gonna put this at the Del Rio time. Pete Carroll's here to change that culture. Who's coming in behind him? Is it going to be Chip Kelly to take over and be able to keep a lot of what Pete Carroll instills in these 3 or 4 years? Or is it going to be somebody else? Pete Carroll's going to change the culture to what we need, bring back that, what we keep talking about, that old school football, I feel. But what's going to happen in 3 years, maybe 4 years, if we keep that, if we exercise that fourth year team option,
Right.
what happens after that? Because you could change the culture, but the minute he leaves, we could change it right back and go right back to where we've
Yeah,
been.
who's
And
going to
that's the
come
part.
along? Yeah, who's going to come along and sustain what he sets up and keep it going?
Yes.
If he's able to establish the culture. And I didn't want to bring it up on you guys' show, but it's something we talk about, a lot on our show and after our, last year or so. Is that me personally believe that the Raiders are being lined up to be sold in a majority ownership deal with Tom Brady eventually. I believe that's what's being set up to happen. And so it's another reason why I'm kind of been hesitant
I know what you're saying. I can
really
see that.
future prognostication on the Raiders, because that will truly be the end of my fanship if that happens. But in the interest of business and sports entertainment and business, it looks like that's what it's being lined up for. I mean, Mark's made millions of dollars in the WNBA, millions of dollars in from Vegas. He's not really a football guy, per se. He doesn't have any heirs. And he's not an administrative guy, and here comes Brady and some big high-powered, investment group. And I could see in a year or two, him being the majority owner of the Raiders,
I don't know about that quick, but I do see where you're going, and I can't argue that. I do see that as a possibility going as right now, Mark Davis is trying to set up, what happens when after Caroline dies, and then he gets to the point he can't do it anymore because there is no heir. I mean, Al had Mort, for going and everything, but there's nobody after Mort. And maybe he's trying to set it up to be successful, and let's hope that he can do a good job in this. Let's hope that, I don't know. This whole Brady thing is a project that we have to wait to see how it starts to play out. This is the first year of it, and we have to start to see how things go and things play out and where things are going in this. But
I look at East Oakland, them motherfuckers look suspect. Okay, they look suspect, both of them. Mark Davis and Tom Brady in bed together look suspect. As the young children say, no Diddy. Okay. It's diabolical. Tom Brady becomes majority owner of the Raiders. It's diabolical.
Yeah, it's crazy because Charles Woodson got a piece of the Browns. We're like, well, how come Wilson can't have a piece of the Raiders? He got his own Woodson whiskey.
Exactly. Why isn't Lincoln Kennedy the general manager? You know?
I know before they moved, John Madden, when he was still alive, John Madden and I'm forgetting his name, safety from the Niners came over to the Raiders. I'm forgetting his name.
Ronnie
Lott. They had that group that was trying to take over the Raiders and try to.
They didn't have no money though. In the end, they didn't have no money.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, and that's what we're all saying is that's where the culture is going. Like us, we're trying to keep it alive. Just hey, remember when we did this? Remember when we did that? That's not going to happen later on. I mean, we don't even have, like you said, we have more Bears fans than we had Raiders fans because they're overpriced and everything, and it's like they're trying to weed us out. The people who built this image, this Raider image, this Raider, ideology that we created, the fans created in Oakland, and then in LA, and then combined back in Oakland. It's getting taken away. It's getting, and that's why we would try to keep the memories alive, and guys like Raider Mort and have Raider Man come on and keep his a Raider Man talk about what we used to do, and like Al Davis, because I feel like a lot of fans now they forget they've heard of Al Davis. Oh yeah, he owned the Raiders. Mark Davis's dad. Yeah, but he was more than that. Like Asylum said, he was more than that. Only guy in the Hall of Fame to be head coach, GM, AFL commissioner. owner,
and commissioner.
know?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. Just to spin off what you were saying a little bit. We will never have another Al Davis. Never.
Yeah.
There will never be another Al Davis, and that's probably the scary part because I don't know. I mean, and we're not talking about just the Raiders. We'll never have another Al Davis in football. No owner, Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones thinks he's Al Davis, and he's not. He's just going senile. But we'll never. Uh, we'll never have another Al Davis, and that's the scary part because of, like you said, all the different hats he wore, all the different things he's done in the NFL. People don't realize free agency is only around because of Al Davis. If it wasn't for Al Davis, you wouldn't have free agency. You wouldn't be able to get players that you want to get, and all this shit. And there's never going to be another Al Davis, whether that's good or bad. But there's never going to be anybody like Al Davis. And I don't, so we need to find somebody who could deal with the new NFL that Roger Goodell is trying to push down everybody's throat, but be able to skirt the lines. And that's what Al Davis did best. He skirted those lines. You say this, well, I'm going to go this way and do this. I'm going to sign this player into the damn goalpost. I mean, we got Freddie Blitnikoff, and they literally had people, the security keeping his parents off the field so he could sign that contract.
Right.
After that college game, I forget which game it was. I know it was a big game, but anyways, to sign that contract. That's it. The All-Star. But you're not going to have somebody who thinks outside the box like that. Everybody wants to fit within the rules and ain't afraid to bend the rules. And that's what Al Davis did. Is he bent the rules, or rewrite them in some cases, or turn around and say that was never a rule. Until it's a rule, I'm going to keep doing this. But no, everyone's scared. This woke generation is all about fitting within a box, and Al Davis was the box.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, following up on what you're saying is that, like I said a while back, I'm able to accept the modern age of sports business and that we could end up possibly seeing a 35-year-old tech bro with a lot of, Bitcoin money bid on the Raiders one day, or whatever the next big trend is that's going to make a bunch of young billionaires who want to spend their money on hobbies like owning football teams and shit like that. But in all of it, it's got to be, or you would optimally want somebody that's going to buy, like you were saying earlier, Asylum, and what we've been talking about, the history, the tradition, the culture. That's all part of the package of buying brands. The Lakers just sold for $10 billion. That's someone.
And that was only 51%. That was only 51% of the Lakers. They bought in for $10 billion. They're going to have a lot of say so.
Oh
yeah, exactly.
But again, it's buying into the brand. So we hope that we get an owner that buys in the brand to kind of restore the legacy. But you can very well end up with one of these new, like I said, tech and, like you said, woke mugs that buys the team and is totally in it for just the profit margin of what the brand itself makes. Doesn't know shit about football, kind of where you are with Mark Davis in a way. Doesn't really know shit about, football and administrative football and football operations. But he's a trust fund kid. He got inherited a team, put a bunch of people around him, and they're dictating what's going on. And as I sit now, they don't seem to want to win, but also in not wanting to win and not going at the top flight players, you're keeping the team kind of cheap in case you want to sell it. You know what I'm saying? So you can get what you want and get out. Why invest a bunch of money into trying to make the team a, $5-6 billion team where I'll take 3, I'll take 5, and get out. You know what I'm saying? So, we're not going to sign long-term contracts with top flight, top shelf players, and we'll keep Max, and that'll keep people like Asylum and Raider Rob and, Sav believing, something's going to come. They're going to pair him with a Greg Townsend or some type, he's the next Howie Long, and you just keep waiting, like a lot of you kept waiting for Derek Carr to become the next Plunkett, So anyway.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna start closing the show. I know, like you said, you got a book coming out. Do you want to talk a little bit about that before we close out the show? Because that's also part of history, Raider Mort history and everything like that.
Oh, yeah, real quick. It's a book I've been working on for the last 10 years, and it's going to encapsulate my life as Raider Rob, the sports fan personality that I became under the flag of the Raiders. It's going to touch on everything from my childhood up to, the Raiders and, how I started to first become part of that world, going back, before they came back to LA and when they had left as a kid. And just like I said, best analogy again is this kind of Forrest Gumpish, type of journey of being aligned with this team and the culture of Oakland and everything kind of encapsulating, seeing, coming together and seeing this team leave and then come back thinking that would never happen. And then, all of us together, becoming this second wave of the Raider identity through the fan base that in Oakland, we were privileged, me and Son of Black Hole here, to be right in the middle, and yourself too, Asylum, whenever you came up to Oakland. So it's going to be about that. It's going to be about the Black Hole. It's going to serve some controversy. I am the creator and founder of Raider Nation, and it's time that the truth be told. I'm not going to die George Washington Carver and have you motherfuckers talking about me 80 years from now, about how he was the guy. No, while I'm alive, I'm going to tell it. And
do we have any idea when the book's coming out?
We're going to try to get it out Asylum Thanksgiving or Christmas around that time.
This year?
This year, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, just
let us know.
So
let us know. We would definitely push that book. Yeah, we would definitely push the book. I definitely want to buy a book, so let us know so I can be one of the first to get it. I want an autographed copy, by the way, just to let you know.
And let's not forget, this will be the 30th anniversary of the Los Angeles Raiders moving back to Oakland in 1995. So that's something that we'll all be celebrating, and hopefully that'll have some type of, maybe, who knows, spiritual significance or some type of, But thank you guys for having me on your show, Cage Match audience. Thank you so much. Asylum.
Thank you for coming. No, thank you for being on. We appreciate it. We've been talking about this for a while, me and Savage, and I'm glad we finally made it happen, and we got to make it happen more often.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And then remember, it's in the description of this episode. RaiderFan Radio, the original before it was even called podcasting, the original I guess it was
Internet radio show. Yes, Internet world's #1 sports entertainment internet radio show. That's what we are.
Yes, like
I just said it better myself.
Internet was just coming out. It was AOL. Then it was Raider Rob and Raider Mort and all this. So it was You Got Mail and then Raider Rob. Let's go. Okay.
And I just want to say in parting, man, thank all of you out there. The news broke. Unfortunately, it was June 11th, and Mort had passed in an unfortunate accident in his home in Los Gatos. But I've been seeing on the internet and the social media spaces such an outpouring of reverence, respect, condolences for Mort. He didn't have a real big family, but he was well loved in many other families in the Raider family, in the Raider Nation worldwide. And I want to thank you on behalf of Mort for all of you just, showing him love and speaking his name. And thank you so much for all of you recognizing Steve Mortora. And he really appreciated himself too. Very humble man, very modest guy, but he knew who he was, and he respected that he was respected as being, an elder of the Raider Nation, and that fans loved him. He knew you loved him, and thank you so much, all of you.
Yes, and I'm just thankful that I was able to be there to meet him and experience, him and the knowledge and everything. So I'm thankful that I was able to not just hear him on the radio, but actually meet him, talk to him. I took a picture with him, and just seeing him out there and being a part of, like you said, what grew on in D-Lot in Oakland, and original Black Hole, Raider Mort. It was like that perfect storm. So I'm glad that I was able to experience that and know Raider Mort. I have met Raider Mort, talked to Raider Mort, same thing for Asylum.
Oh yeah, to be honored to have him in our life. I mean, it's not the same as you, Raider Rob. You had him a lot more than the rest of us in that, but just to be able to experience him, to talk to him, and have known the man was just an honor. I mean, it really was, and I'm glad we were able to dedicate a show strictly to him because he deserved this and much, much more. He really did.
Yeah. We're just trying to carry that baton that he carried. Raider
That he
knowledge, Raider
started.
history. Then we're just trying to carry that baton, but acknowledge where we got that from, where we're trying to carry over to that next generation. One more time,
Yes.
what's the name of the book that Anna wants to know? What's the name of the book coming out, or your book coming out?
It's going to be titled Pride and Noise, the confessed true story of the Raider Nation.
All righty.
I'm Raider Rob Howard. And, when I get to production and all that, I'll definitely be giving you the information. Thank you, Anna, for your interest. I appreciate it. Thank you. We'll make sure you get a copy.
She said thank you for the knowledge. She's a big supporter of the show. But yes, thank you very much. And I appreciate it. Was kind of last minute, but we all just heard the news a few days ago. And I said the first person I know I need to get on here is Raider Rob, because I know Raider Rob was there from the beginning of not just, of when the Oakland Raiders came back and the Black Hole and Mort was always there. So I knew Raider Rob would be the perfect person to talk about Raider Mort and and all the importance that he had and the significance that he had when it came to us Raider fans and the Raider organization and the knowledge that he kept.
I don't think we could have had anybody better on than Raider Rob to be able to help us with Mort's memory with all this. So we really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, son. Thank you.
We usually end the show with the word from my old coach, Coach Wallace, aka Raider Milt, who, like you said, was on like we were talking about, on the opposite side of the field, talking mess.
He had a lot of verbal run-ins with Junior Seau as well.
Yeah, and he learned all the Samoan bad words so he can communicate with him. But we're gonna end it differently. We're gonna close it out with a video of Raider Mort talking about there'll never be another Al Davis. There'll never be another Raider Mort. Well, we have Raider Rob, but a Raider Mort like that, there'll never be another Raider Mort. It's him talking about Al Davis after Al Davis passed. So we're going to end with that video. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Raider Rob, for coming on.
Thank you,
go to RaiderFan Radio. RaiderFan Radio. Go there. Check out. It's in the description.
On YouTube channel, yes. Thank you.
And we're going to end the show like this. So everyone take care. We'll see you next week. Rest in peace, Raider Mort. Take care, everybody. Peace out.
First year, he went 10-4, Coach of the Year. But most importantly, he knocked off the Chargers, who won the AFL title that year, and knocked off the Chiefs, who won it the year before. He put the Raiders on the map. And Al's 3 years of coaching, he was 23-16-3. When JFK was assassinated in '63, November 22nd, he told the Raider organization, the AFL, we're not playing. So if you want to play, you play without the Raiders. The NFL played, the AFL didn't. And Pete Rozell's legacy was scarred for life on that one incident. In 1966, Al became commissioner of the AFL. It wasn't that he was a paper guy, he was signing the stars of the NFL to the AFL. The leagues merged. That year, September 1866, the Oakland Coliseum opened up, and the AFL was on the map. We had the silver and black attack, a brand new stadium. Al Davis ran the team. We had a huge contract with the AFL and NBC, and we were going on. The next year it happened. We went 13-1. Our only loss came to Broadway Joe Namath, and the New York Jets back in the Big Apple. We went 13-1, won the AFL crown, and played Vince Lombardi for the World Championship for pro football. And that was just in 8 years. And in those 67, 68, 69, the Raiders played in 3 straight AFL championship games against Houston, the Jets, and the Chiefs. And we became nationally known. In the 60s, that team under Al Davis brought civic pride to Oakland and the surrounding communities. We were Oakland. We were the Raiders. We were winners.
Yes, that's right.
Raider Nation!
Raiders! We came storming into the 70s. We played our first Monday Night Football game here against the Washington Redskins. Kicked the crap out of them on Monday Night Football, 35-23. We were in the first AFC Championship game since the merger, playing Johnny Unitas and the Colts back in Memorial Stadium in Baltimore. And in the 70s, we were in the playoffs 7 times, 6 AFC Championship games, 1 Super Bowl, 1 AFC Championship, culminating with our world title against the Minnesota Vikings January 9, 77, at a Royal Seco Canyon, Pasadena, the Rose Bowl. 66-85 was the golden age under Al Davis with the Raiders. 15 AFL, AFC Championship appearances, 11 championship games, 4 Super Bowls, and 3 world titles. We had heated rivalries with Joe Namath and the Jets, Lenny Dawson and the Chiefs, Terry Bradshaw and the Steelers, Bob Greasy and the Miami Dolphins, right here in this stadium. When you said the Raiders, you said Al Davis. You said Al Davis, you said the Raiders. You said Al Davis and the Oakland Raiders, you said the silver and black attack, the will to win, the commitment to excellence, pride and joy, and just win, baby. You said the Heidi game, CNN, fully rolling, goes to the post, immaculate reception, Rob Lytle fumble, and the tuck rule. When you said Al Davis and the Raiders, you said Jim Otto, Blanda, Willie Brown, Blitzenhoff, Grant, Wayne Hopkins, Uphill, Jaws, Matt Jack Tatum, George Atkinson, the 11 Angry Men, Soul Patrol 1, and Soul Patrol 2. Al Davis will not be with us anymore, but he will be with us in spirit and us with him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always.
God bless Al Davis. Rest in peace. The likes of him we'll never see again. Yeah!